The Hasids are mystic sects within the Jewish faith. They gave Klezmer some of its most beautiful tunes that grew out of wordless songs that they sang to connect with God.
They're the mystical Jews, you know, they're like the Rastas. In fact, I think there's a good reason why there's a similarity of appearance. They have spiritual concerns more at the front of their consciousness, and they no doubt pour that into the music.
What sounds like football chanting is in fact a niggun, a style of song particular to the Hasids.
Hasidic tradition is all around nigunim, so the singing of wordless melodies. And very much about, I'm glad I've got a table here, but very much about kind of like table pounding, you know, so like banging on the table, drinking some slivovitz or whatever, kind of singing for hours, reaching a real state of ecstasy and transportation through the singing of these wordless songs.
They are ecstatic. They will sing a tune for half an hour and dance to it and sing this one tune over and over and over again until they achieve an almost trance-like state, which they call dveikus, union with God.
These niggunim are symbolic of the rebel spirit in which Hasidism was born in the 18th century, as a grassroots reaction against the religious establishment.
The establishment was very much about learning Torah for its own sake and emphasizing less, perhaps, the more spiritual, mystical aspects of Judaism. And I think the common people couldn't really identify with that so much. And the Hasidim said, even if you're not able to learn at the same level as some of the great rabbis, but everybody can sing, dance, they can drink alcohol, they can get to God in a spiritual way and in a way that approaches God from the heart.
I once had a night in Poland singing these songs, and we were banging the table for hours, and we were drinking slivovitz and singing these songs. And by the end, it felt as if the table was like coming up to meet our hands. It was like so immensely powerful.
What's important to realise is that 150 years ago in Eastern Europe, if you were a non-Hasidic Jew, you would have Hasidim living right next to you. So their system of prayer and their system of song and their system of melody writing would have influenced everybody. And some of the greatest tunes of the Klezmer repertoire have come from the Hasidim.
The most famous klezmer tune in the world came from a Hasidic niggun. Hava Nagila, originally a wordless melody from the Ukraine. It was set to words in the early 1900s. Throughout the 20th century, Hava Nagila was to increase in tempo and popularity, while traditional klezmer was to find itself in eclipse. In the late 19th century, there was little demand for joyful music as the Jews of Eastern Europe faced terrifying times. Millions fled from a sustained campaign of persecution and anti-Semitism. By the 1920s, around 2 million had left for America. About 150,000 came to the UK. The largest of the Jewish communities here lived in London's East End. Some hung on to the culture they came from. Many, however, wanted nothing more to do with it.
I think my grandparents turned their back on the lives that they left behind, A, because it was unhappy memories, probably, and because they wanted to fit in. Unlike today, where a lot of people come from abroad and come here, they still don't want to be part of Great Britain. The Jewish immigrants did want to become part of Britain, so they became as English as they possibly could.
This meant doing things the English way, like going to Bournemouth on holiday, tea with milk and playing tombola, and learning how to cook with margarine. Klezmer had no part in this world, and anyway, Britain was buzzing to its own music.
They danced to the big bands. Jack Payne, Jack Hilton, Billy Cotton, Victor Sylvester, those were the bands of the day. But it wasn't Jewish dancing. Never.
When I pretend I'm gay, I never feel that way. I'm only painting the clouds with sunshine.
So although my grandma would sing my Yiddish mama, I mean, she would sing it in Yiddish as well. She also had Doris Day, and she also liked other forms of music. You see, I don't think the Jews in Britain really ever formed a society which would need folk music in that way. I was trying to think of anywhere that anybody would have actually performed Klezmer music as a folk music for dancing and for parties.
Jewish weddings became more British too, and it seemed that the entire wedding repertoire had boiled down to just one tune.
And my sister and I would look at them and think they were mad, because Joyce and I loved jitterbugging, and jiving, and that, because we knew nothing about that.
I thought, as a little boy, that Jewish weddings were really boring. There would be none of the kind of wonderful madness that is Klezmer. They probably would sing Hava Nagila. And so you'd all get into this huge circle, but if you were little, you'd just get trampled on. So I'd emerge from the wedding completely bruised and bored, and my parents would wonder why I wouldn't go to the social functions of the family after that, but there we are.
The urgent liveliness that was Klezmer seemed to have become culturally redundant. But there was still a spark. How do we know? Because someone made a record of Derek Reed's bar mitzvah.
The band playing is the Musicants, house band in Klezmer, to a restaurant called Silberstein's in the East End of London. This particular occasion is my bar mitzvah on the 16th of May in 1959.
From Yorkshire?
Yes, I travelled all the way back from Harrogate in Yorkshire to come to Derek's bar mitzvah.
Well, that's at least something worthwhile recording.
And this particular thing, I watch most of the adults thoroughly enjoying themselves, because I couldn't do the antics that some of them were doing, but they seemed to enjoy it. And as you hear it, you'll also hear one of my mother's uncles actually going straight past the microphone.
Derek grew up in an East End family of traditional musicians and storytellers who'd kept their traditions going and loved the old tunes.
This particular piece is based on the Cossack dance. If you know what the Cossack dance is to go down, bend the knees, kick them out and jump up. In Yiddish expression it's called a Gesatzke. And It normally is a piece that is played at weddings and symphonies, or should I say used to be. It's not very often heard today.
Klezmer was hanging on, but only just. There was no foreseeable future for it in the UK.
I know, having spoken to one of the younger members of the musicants, that most of the boys of the younger generation were actually advised by their fathers, who were the musicians of the band, 70 plus when I was a kid. They actually were advised to go into serious classical music. Vladimir Ashkenazy's father was a klezmer, and he was told, you can't make a living at this, go into serious music.
Klezmer's loss was Western music's gain, not just in classical music, but across the board.
The Jewish influence on English popular music on a Richter scale of 1 to 16 is 17. They were able to assimilate and then develop. I worked in the music industry myself, as you know, and there were always Jewish people there. I mean, they're always running it. It was a business. It's a good business,
It was show business. One of the most successful post-war composers was Lionel Blair, better known as Lionel Bart. Born into an East End Jewish family, he would have grown up around Yiddish culture and klezmer music. In his most famous musical, Oliver, Bart reached back into that heritage to give the Jewish thief Fagin a klezmer-esque swan song.
A man's got a heart, hasn't he? Joking apart, hasn't he? And though I'd be the first one to say that I wasn't the same, I'm finding it hard to be really as black as they paint. I'm reviewing the situation. Can a fella be a villain all his life? All the trials and tribulations. Better settle down and get myself a wife. And a wife who could can sew for me and come for me and go for me and go for me and nag at me. The fingers she would wag at me, the money she would take of me, a misery she'd make of me. I think I better think it out again.